What happens when a live television moment spirals into something no one expected? In this video, we are going to dive deep into a dramatic, cinematic, emotionally intense recreation of a shocking on-air clash. Captured in a full three-part scripted narrative, the studio was electric from the moment the countdown began. Cameras glided on rails, the audience murmured with that unmistakable pre-show buzz. And behind the sleek desk of The View, Joy Behar adjusted her glasses with the casual confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The lights hit her in that familiar warm gold, while producers whispered quick notes through headsets, pacing behind the glass partition. Guy Fieri stood backstage, hands in the pockets of his flame-patterned jacket, tapping his foot against the glossy floor. He was supposed to join the panel for a lively, upbeat segment about food culture, communities, and the joy of cooking. No one, not producers, not audience members, not even Guy himself, had any idea that the segment would take a sharp turn that would leave viewers stunned and social media ignited with speculation. A stage manager lifted a palm toward him. "You're up in 15, Guy. They're doing the intro now." Guy exhaled, loosening his shoulders. "Let's rock this," he muttered, giving himself one final nod before stepping toward the curtain. Out on the stage, the theme music hit its crescendo. The hosts gathered their notes, the audience applauded, and Joy flashed her signature smile as she leaned toward the camera. "Welcome back to The View. Today we've got a packed show and a very special guest. You know him. You love him. He's been around the country more times than I can count. Please welcome the one and only Guy Fieri." The crowd erupted. The curtain parted. Guy strode confidently toward the table, flashing a grin, waving, giving a few playful fist bumps as he passed by the front row. The host clapped along, and Joy leaned back in her chair with a raised eyebrow, already preparing a comedic jab. Guy sat. Cameras swooped in. The conversation launched like a routine daytime TV moment, comfortable and warm. "So, Guy," Joy said, adjusting her cards, "you've been traveling nonstop. I swear, half the time I wonder if you live in diners. Do you even remember what your home looks like anymore?" Guy laughed, leaning forward with that unmistakable charisma. "Home is wherever the food is, Joy, and right now, it's right here." The audience laughed. The panel chuckled. The atmosphere was loose, easy, and bright. But then, unseen by most, there was a flicker, a shift, a small, subtle crack in the foundation of the segment. Sonny asked a question about the cultural impact of Guy's shows. Sarah followed up about representation. Guy answered with warmth, acknowledging voices, communities, and flavors across America. Then Joy interlaced her fingers and leaned in. The camera angle cut sharply to her. The tempo of the moment shifted. "Guy," she said, her voice deceptively light, "you've been on the road for years, but some people have criticized your approach, that you tend to romanticize certain communities without truly understanding their struggles. What do you say to that?" Guy blinked. His posture straightened. The audience let out that subtle but undeniable ooh reaction. "Well," Guy said, keeping his tone steady, "I think people misunderstand what the show is about. I'm highlighting real people, real stories. I'm not pretending to fix every issue. I'm just uplifting voices that—" Joy cut in, not aggressively, but sharply. "Sure, but don't you think sometimes your show turns complicated realities into feel-good entertainment? Like a food-coded version of the real world?" The air tightened. Producers exchanged glances through the glass. One of them muttered, "What is she doing? This wasn't in the prep notes." Guy's brows pulled together. "Joy, with all due respect, I don't think that's fair. I spend a lot of time getting to know folks. I don't reduce them to entertainment." Joy shrugged, her expression unreadable. "I'm just asking what the critics are asking. It's my job." Guy inhaled deeply. "And it's my job to show respect. To communities, to people, to their stories." A thick silence stretched. Cameras zoomed closer, like predators sensing tension. Sonny shifted uncomfortably. Sarah dropped her pen. Whoopi lifted her eyebrows, her eyes flicking between Joy and Guy as though she could feel the temperature rising. Joy leaned forward again, her voice firmer. "But Guy, You have to admit there's a difference between telling stories and using them. You show up somewhere, film for a day, then you're gone. Meanwhile, those people stay with their challenges. Guy's jaw clenched. I don't use anyone. That's not who I am, Joy pressed. But isn't it convenient? You get applause, fame, and all these stories while they stay there, struggling. Guy's hands tightened around the edge of the table. Joy, you're reducing my work into something ugly, and I don't appreciate it. A collective gasp rippled through the studio audience. Joy straightened. I'm not reducing anything. I'm asking a question. You're a public figure. Expect scrutiny. Guy's voice dropped a register. Scrutiny is one thing. Accusation is another. The tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. A producer quickly scribbled on a whiteboard. Shift topic. Shift topic. But Joy wasn't done. You seem defensive. Why is that? Whoopi snapped her gaze toward Joy. Joy! Let him answer, Joy said, her tone unwavering. Guy leaned forward, elbows on the table, staring directly at her. I'm defensive because you're implying that my entire career is built on exploitation. And that's not only untrue, it's insulting. Joy held his gaze evenly. I didn't say exploitation. I said you simplify people's lives. Guy shook his head slowly. You know, Joy, sometimes I think you say things just to stir the pot. An audible, whoa, rolled through the crowd. The host grew still. Joy's expression cooled. Sometimes stirring the pot is the only way to taste what's really been cooking. The room vibrated with energy, the kind that made live television unforgettable. Sarah whispered to Sonny, What is happening right now? Sonny whispered back, I have no idea, but he's not having it. Guy pushed back slightly in his chair. His face hardened in a way the audience had never seen on daytime TV. Joy, he said, voice low, I came here to talk about community, about passion, about connection. If you want to question my integrity on live TV, fine, but do it without twisting my purpose. Joy tilted her head. I'm not twisting anything. I'm observing. And I'm responding, Guy said, his tone icy sharp. Another whiteboard flashed through the glass. We need commercial, now. But before the crew could signal, Joy glanced at Guy's hands gripping the table. Then answer this, she said. Do you truly listen to the people you feature? Or are they stepping stones in the Guy Fieri experience? That was the spark. Guy's entire expression shifted. Shock, disbelief, then a flush of anger. You have no right to question my heart like that. Joy remained still, calm, unmoving. Everyone's heart can be questioned, Guy. That's life. Guy rose slightly from his chair, not standing, but lifting just enough to force gravity back onto the moment. Joy, he said, voice thick with frustration. I'm tired of people who've never walked with me, never seen what I've seen, assuming I don't care. I care more than you have any idea. The audience sat rigid. Joy exhaled slowly, crossing her arms. Then show it. Explain it. Don't get offended. Answer the question. Guy blinked hard, disbelief in his face. No, I'm not doing this with you. Not like this. Not when it's framed like an attack. Joy didn't respond. The air was chokingly silent. Finally, Whoopi leaned in, wiping a hand across her forehead. Okay, we're going to take a... No, Guy said suddenly. I want to make something clear before we go anywhere. The producers froze. Guy placed both hands on the table, leaning toward Joy. I don't use people. I uplift them. I give them a platform. I support their businesses, their families, their dreams. If you choose not to see that, that's on you. Joy held her mouth in a tight line. I see what I see. Guy stared at her for a long, heavy moment. A moment the cameras caught from every angle, reframing the scene like a dramatic cinematic standoff. Then he sank back into his seat and looked down, the tension simmering dangerously. The moment was unresolved, volatile, ready to fracture even further. Whoopi whispered, barely audible, We need to cut to break. But they didn't. Not yet. The energy in the room had shifted permanently, and the crack between Guy Fieri and Joy Behar had only just begun to open. Part 2. The moment they returned from commercial break, something in the atmosphere had changed. The audience shifted in their seats with a nervous, electric anticipation, as if they sensed that whatever had happened before the break wasn't over. Not even close. The movement of the cameras became tighter, more controlled, as though the operators were bracing for unexpected turns. The hosts rearranged themselves at the table, but nothing about their body language looked natural anymore. Sarah sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap. Sunny glanced down at her cards as though they might somehow rearrange the direction of the show. Whoopi, calm but wary, took a measured breath. Joy sat still, composed, her shoulders squared, her expression unreadable. A veteran of live broadcasting who knew how to command a moment simply by refusing to blink. And Guy sat angled slightly away from her, jaw clenched, fingers tapping a restless pattern on the table. His energy was different, sharper, heavier, like a man trying his hardest to keep something bottled up, but failing with every passing second. Whoopi leaned into the camera. Welcome back. We're having a passionate conversation with Guy Fieri about the stories behind communities, food, and representation. Let's continue. But Joy cut in before Whoopi could steer things back toward calmer waters. Guy, Joy said, her tone level, before the break, you seemed upset by a simple question. Guy's head snapped sideways to look at her. Upset because you framed it like a personal attack. Joy shrugged. It's not personal, it's journalism. We ask tough questions. Guy leaned back, crossing his arms. There's tough and there's unfair. Joy lifted a brow. Unfair? Sunny tried to interject. Maybe we could... Joy raised a hand, stopping her. No, let's clarify this. Guy thinks it's unfair for me to ask whether he truly understands the communities he features. Guy exhaled. Sharply, the tension rising like steam. It's unfair when you imply I don't. Joy folded her hands. I didn't imply. I asked. That's the same thing, Guy snapped. The audience murmured nervously. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we can shift to the cookbook. Guy's voice elevated, just enough to cut her off without shouting. No, let's finish this. Clearly Joy wants to question my purpose. So let's talk. Joy didn't flinch. Purpose only matters if the impact is real. Guy pointed toward her. You don't get to judge the impact of my work. Joy kept her expression steady. If your work is public, the impact is public. Guy's laugh was short, humorless. You love stirring things up. And you hate being challenged, Joy replied. The audience collectively inhaled. Guy's chair scraped the floor as he turned fully toward her. What I hate is being misrepresented. Sunny spoke gently. Guy, no one is misrepresenting you. We're having a conversation about... Guy held up a hand. A conversation? This is Joy turning a positive discussion into a character critique. Joy responded immediately. I didn't critique your character. I critiqued the narrative style of your show. You said I simplify people's lives, Guy fired back. That's my character. No, Joy said calmly. That's your storytelling. Guy stared, disbelieving. Joy, you know exactly what you were suggesting. Joy leaned forward, her gaze steady. I was suggesting that telling someone's story comes with responsibility. And sometimes I wonder if your show takes that responsibility seriously. Something inside Guy snapped. Are you serious right now? He demanded. Joy didn't blink. Very. Guy's voice deepened. I spend hours, days, with the people I highlight. I listen. I learn. I share their stories with respect. Joy countered. But you choose which parts of their stories the world sees. That's power. Guy's voice sharpened. Power I use responsibly. Do you? Joy replied. Guy inhaled sharply, struggling to keep his composure. You're questioning something you've never experienced firsthand. Joy tilted her head. I'm questioning what viewers see. Guy's hands curled on the table. No, you're accusing me of exploiting people. Joy's tone dropped. I never said that. But you meant it, Guy shot back. Joy froze. The weight of his statement hung heavy in the studio. Even the audience seemed unsure of how to react. Some leaned forward, others looked at each other, sensing the fragile edge the conversation was skating on. Whoopi finally stepped in. Okay, we're done with this line of questioning. Guy raised his hand. No, I want to say something. Joy remained still, her gaze unbroken. The tension radiating off both of them was almost unbearable. Guy leaned forward, his voice heavy with emotion. Joy, I've been to towns where people have lost everything. Businesses burned down, restaurants destroyed by hurricanes, families struggling to even keep their lights on. And I was there with them, not as some tourist with a camera, as a person, helping, listening, supporting. Joy waited. Guy continued. I've cooked thousands of meals for first responders, fed families during disasters. I've shown up when nobody else would. Joy nodded slowly. That's commendable, truly, but it doesn't erase the criticism about your show's tone. Guy pressed his palms to the table. You're focusing on tone while ignoring impact. Joy interlocked her fingers. Both matter. Guy stared at her. Not equally. Joy replied softly but firmly. To some people, they do. Guy leaned back, shaking his head. You just don't get it. Joy replied, then explain it better. The audience gasped at her bluntness. Guy slammed his palm lightly.